So this is I worked on this about 3 years ago. Um, but it's on the subject of both Japanese art in four fragments and the fold, mainly centered on Deleuze and Foucault. Um, Kate, could you start reading?
Sure. The fold is related in Deleuze to the productivity of subjectivity. In particular, the fold announces that the inside is also the fold of the outside. This opens out to other forms of folding, the fold of the body upon itself, the fold of time, the fold of material embodiment and memory. With each fold, another mode of becoming is introduced.
So the fold is related to also the idea of becoming. Um, and often it takes the form in Mill Plateau of becoming animal or becoming human. It's just one becoming after another becoming.
Subjectivation is created by folding, states Deleuze. The first fold is that of the body, the second fold of the relation of forces, the third fold that of knowledge, and the fourth fold that of the outside itself. He continues that these four folds are like the final or formal cause, the acting or material cause of subjectivity or interiority as a relationship to oneself.
So he's trying to overcome Cartesian dualism, the idea of the body and mind being separate, or so the fold is a non-dualistic concept.
Umusuna,
Yeah.
Memories Before History, Senkai Juko, 2012. Landscape. Did you want somebody else to read? Sorry.
No, you keep reading.
A splash of ink, an awakened mind, a boat passes through, and silence pervades space. Mind, space, and matter in a series of folds that open gestures of emptiness. Shesu, Landscape, 1495.
And he gave this scroll to a student who reached enlightenment. He gave it as a token of, as like a, a gesture of which is wordless, a gesture which is, in this case, an aesthetic object with a long inscription, but it's an acknowledgement of enlightenment.
The flinging of ink marks the surrender of the fixed form of the image to the global configuration of the force that subtends it. Eidos is scattered to the four winds. The image is made to float on the forces which lie outside the frame. It is thrown as one throws the dice. What breaks into the image is the rest of the universe, everything outside the frame. Norman Bryson. What is eidos? Eidos.
Um, and it's like a sense of the world.
Winter Landscape, Sesshuyu Toyo, early 16th century. Attributed to Sesshuyu Landscape, Muromachi period.
He's a really interesting artist. I mean, he's probably the greatest landscape artist of the whole Japanese culture of the Muromachi period. But he went to China to seek enlightenment, and it was in the Ming period. But he collected scrolls as well from the Song period and took them back to Japan. But he found a teacher in China, in which he was granted enlightenment. But when he went back to Japan, he refused to become head of a great monastery. Instead, had a small monastery. And he spent a long time walking. He walked the entire length of Japan. A lot of his scroll paintings reflect this relationship to walking.
Mountain landscape, Tensho Shogun, 15th century.
It's either Muromachi or Momoyama period.
Birds and flowers of the four seasons, Muromachi period.
Is typical of the installation of a screen and a scroll.
Hasegawa Tokaku, pine trees. Shorinzen-zu, Byobu, 1595. I'm sure I mangled that.
That's the Momoyama period. But that's equivalent of just beginning of the Baroque period. So Caravaggio was painting around this time. This is Zen Garden in Kyoto.
Zen gardens represent miniaturized, stylized landscapes. They're mostly found at temples or monasteries. The earliest gardens date back to the Heian period, 794 to 1185. Zen was introduced to Japan at the end of the 12th century, and with this new style of garden design evolved. And with this, a new style of garden design evolved, which was often influenced by Chinese classical painting. Heidegger developed a notion of the fourfold in his late writing. It stands for the process of gathering of the space where the thing is. Things constitute the world in their multiplicity and their relationality in the form of earth, sky, mortals, and divinities. The thing is never closed, but is rather a point of intersection or gathering that brings the thing together by referring to what lies beyond itself.
You might know, Heidegger in the late period was very influenced by Zen writing and Taoist writing.
Kinyo Ono Yozan, 1688 to 1704, Zhao and Zhang.
This Edo period.
Birds and flowers of spring and summer, Hasegawa Chokaku. Katsushika Hokusai, 1760 to 1849 series, Fugaku Sanjuro Keki, riverbank with traveler and boat.
So in the 18th century, 18th century, you get the practice of woodblock printing developing as a popular art form. And these took the form of books, often in series of, in this case, landscape, a journey. Often centered on either water or mountains.
Landscape in the Mist, Utagawa Kunisada, mid-19th century. Hiroshige Seba, 1835.
And both, principally Hokusai and Hiroshige, was having a great influence on French Impressionism and symbolist art. They came to, particularly to France, almost wrapped up in, used to wrap up porcelain. They're known in the markets as penny prints. So Van Gogh had a big collection. Van Gogh said he thought he said he thinks like a Japanese. He is Japanese, he thought. but he learnt a lot from Hokusai, the drawings of Hokusai. So particularly flat color and composition and a sense of serialization came from Japanese woodblock prints.
Quinault, Yoshihiko Ueda. In this book, Quinault, Yoshihiko Ueda photographed forest space as if untouched by human history. It is as though time itself does not enter the space, or it occasions a remote form of time that endures on the outside of human time. There is a common element to this view of late modern Japanese depictions of various genres, and that is the art of the book, and in the late context, the photographic book. On the level of tradition, this practice grew out of ukiyo, or art of the floating world, starting in the Edo period. This generated a concern for the idea of the series or succession of images, of the nature of being as simply passing through this world. The book form enabled the artist to pass through various ways of capturing the relationship of the image and time. With this, the apprehension of the effects of memory and transience. Ueda Yoshihiko produced a series of forest photographs produced in 1990 to 91. He called the series Quinault. On a figural level, we're drawn into the deep of an ancient forest. There's a feeling of another time, a time that is perhaps closer to being immemorial, or even a realm that is detached by this sense of time, and hence from our sense of having a world. The surface of these images appears to be a form of dazzling shadow, intense and all over, a zone of iridescent becoming that is retained within itself. We might enter, but only through the sense of being outside of the countenance of our vision. In other words, a feeling abandonment is exacted from us as we move inward. Rather than moving in straight lines, we are instead forced to circle around, and in doing so, face the gaps that might appear within thought. In these works, we are awake to everything that can be seen, and as such, we might dwell within the field of vision itself. Yet there is also an apprehension of that which exceeds vision, namely an equally intense sense of non-being, which challenges the frame of representation. Interior and anterior are drawn into proximity, as the certainties of vision give away vertigo of orientation. Visions of Japan, Tomatsu Shomei. Plastics, Kujikuri Beach, Chiba, 1988-89. Somi Tomatsu, Hadaruma Island, 1971. Untitled, Akajima, Okinawa, The Pencil in the Sun, 1973. In this, photography is the same thing as love. When my gaze, diving into the sea as my subject, converges with the act of photography, hot sparks fly at the point of intersection. The sea is a phantom mother living deep inside of me. My sea is not blue. It is dyed the color of blood, and it envelops me with the depth of its silence. To me, it conveys the murderous impulse of youth and teaches me the world in the softness of the womb. In other words, the sea is the home of my heart. Hiroshiki Sugimoto, Ligurian Sea, Savoir, 1982.
Someone else like to take over the reading. Thank you.
I can do it. Body and textile, the erotic fold. Kitagawa Utamaro, Lovers in the Upstairs Room of a Tea House, from Poem of the Pillow, 1788.
So these were not known as pillow books.
Ukiyo-e was often translated as Pictures of the Floating World. It originally reflected the Buddhist concept of a life of transitory illusion, but then became connected to life's worldly pleasures. The ambiguity of this term added to the range of iconography that became manifest under its umbrella. Oban Yokoi Shunga, Man with a Very Young Woman. Shunga. There was an estimated 3,000 books produced, with each containing some dozen images. Utamaro, for example, was responsible for 17 produced in the last 10 years of his life, 1794 to 1803. In Utaramo's prints, the sexual act is seemingly distributed into the surrounding objects, and within this, cloth and body are folded into one another. This then achieves a mode of decentering eroticism within the free play of flesh and the visual surround. Kiseru Pipe by Suzuki Harunobu, 1769. Yukio Mishima wrote his first novel, Confessions of a Mask, in 1949. He started to have photographs made in homoerotic poses, such as this one of Saint Sebastian. He lived his life by blending fiction and reality, finally committing ritual suicide in public. Shomai Tomatsu, Untitled, from the series Chewing Gum and Chocolate, 1958. Eros Diary, Nobuyoshi Araki. Nobuyoshi Araki, Untitled, Eros Diary, 2015. Love in Winter, Araki. Daido Moriyama, Shinjuku, Tokyo, 1970. Moriyama viewed the space of the city as being alive with erotic energy. His photographs depict seedy hotels, hotel rooms, nightclubs, street signs, and lonely encounters. Kanagawa, 1966. On the Bed, Tokyo, Daido Moriyama. Tokyo, 1969. Daido Moriyama, Tights and Lips. Daido Moriyama, Lips. Costume. Kamakura period kimono.
So Kamakura is equivalent time. It's medieval. It's 12th, 13th century. It was one of the most sophisticated periods in Japanese cultural history. It shows the different aspects of costume in Japan from the Kamakura onwards.
Screen, Iwasa Matabai, 17th century. No Robe, Edo period, 1615 to 1868, 19th century. Japan, silk. No costume, Edo period, 1618 to 1868. Photograph Kei Ogawa. An Englishman and an American watching lion dances, published by Kiya Sojiro, late Edo period, third month of 1861, Utagawa Yohitomi. Sashiko Farmer's Clothing.
Susie Miyake, East meets West.
My years in Paris were very important as the basis for my career, but the ideas of beauty and the body were too rigid for me. The ideas were displaced by the freedom of 1968.
This is a publication, East meets West by Miyake.
Western clothing is already perfect. I realized that even if I tried, there's not much I could do to improve it. On the other hand, the Japanese kimono is tradition frozen in time. It does not belong to contemporary life. My challenge as a clothing designer has been to create something different, not traditionally Japanese, not purely Western, but something which has the best of both, a new genre of clothing. Issey Miyake. Now, in a world where boundaries are being destroyed or redefined before our eyes daily, I feel more people are being left without a sense of definition. Issey Miyake. After extensive searching and thinking out for new ideas, just before time ran out, I realized that the clothes could be the body and the body could be the clothes. This was an idea for possible new clothes. I then started to design for the body. Rai Kawakubo, founder of Comme des Garçons. Fashion deconstruction. Rai Kawakubo started by examining the syntax of clothing and would reverse the relationship of inside and outside by using lining material on the outside, for instance. Wearing her clothes became an experiment in the behavior of bodies as much as a visual event. She also aligned herself with the art world by using artists as models such as Clement and Basquiat.
Right. That's Clemente, word Comme des Garçons. It's all Comme des Garçons. This is from an exhibition.
Are you,
There's an exhibition staged in the Metropolitan in New York.
I don't think you're screen sharing anymore.
Okay, let me just go back.
Yeah, we didn't see any of those last four.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Keep going.
That's Dementi,
Okay.
ancient Dementi. Conde Garçon. Started experimenting with body shape. Clothes no longer look like they fitted the body. Someone read this?
Oh. Do you want me to continue?
I just continue for this section.
Bodies stand before, simply there as outward appearance, form forming form, a radiation of light, a shining issued forth, beautiful as such, and perhaps in turn true. Bodies as a vehicle to manifest the obscure connections that lies remote from everyday dispensation, a bringing into presence of an arrival contained or masked within semblance. Absence and presence held in equal relation, such that truth might pass through, as if phantom or as abandonment, all in folds of becoming. Like part dance theatre and part cinema, real and virtual, moving and still, ethereal and actual, closer in all these elements to a force of oscillation, not this and not that, but not contradiction either. Better to say a bringing forth, a flurry of images, but then still just that, movement and interruption in contest, as if ancient and futural might commingle in the same space, the last fold. The face.
The face.
Show me your
uh,
show me your original face before you were born, Zen Koan. Portrait of Ikkyu by Hokusai. Woodblock print Utamaro Kitagawa, 1750 to 1806. Beauty in the Northern Province. Toshusai Sharaku, 1794 to 95. A generation of photographers emerged out of the development of post-World War II culture by providing a counterpoint to the fine economy of the new consumer culture, which had at its predication a mood that stems out of forgetting. Mostly these artists worked thematically in magazine and book format, invariably positioned in relationship to a textual essay that expressed themselves through moods that intensified the setting of the visual encounter. This was in part a form of political resistance in opposition to the mainstream, thus closer in aesthetic terms to being a form of counterculture. Shomi Tomatsu, Chewing Gum and Chocolate, 1958.
Shomi Tomatsu. Show me again.
Shomi Tomatsu.
Show me Tomatsu again.
It is no accident that the portrait is central to early photography. In the cult of remembrance of dead or absent loved ones, the cult value of the image finds its last refuge. In the fleeting expression of a human face, the aura beckons from early photographs for the last time. This is what gives them their melancholy and incomparable beauty. Walter Benjamin, selected writing. Shomi Tomatsu, Skin of the Nation. Iko Hoso, Ordeal by Roses, Banakai, 1961. Today, when words have lost their material base, in other words, their reality, and seem suspended in midair, a photographer's eye can capture fragments of reality that cannot be expressed in language as it is. He can submit those images as a document to be considered alongside language and ideology. This is why, brash as it may seem, Provoke has the subtitle Provocative Documents for Thought. Manifesto of the Provoke Group by Kohitaki Takuma Nakahira, Takahiko Okada, Yutaka Takanashi, and Daido Moriyama. Takikoji, a photograph from Provoke 3, 1969.
That's a portrait of Daido Moriyama.
Shinjuku is a place that I cannot overlook, that I cannot leave alone as long as I'm a photographer. I do not feel that this is a mission, however. The Shinjuku I see is extremely turbulent. All over, I'm painfully aware of the breakdown and desolation of both the city and its people. When I look at it, I cannot just leave it and photograph something else. People live in the immediate present. If one has an instant of awareness of being alive, it is nothing but the immediate present. We no longer have any feel for what the past we have lived. When people realize that the time they supposedly lived through actually has no substance and that there are no means of self-verification, they tend to be seized with fear and an unspeakable apprehension about the excessive uncertainty of it all. In the end, it leads to an awareness that even living in the present moment is ambiguous. Because we're living our everyday lives doesn't mean that we are constantly aware of being alive, nor does it mean we have a definite tomorrow. In the end, human existence is essentially nothing to rely on. The scenes I'm certain I saw some 30 years ago could just be something that I'm convinced I saw in my own memory. And it is possible they were imaginary scenes to start with. With a completely transformed landscape before me, I'm suddenly aware of how forsaken my life is and how it's not possible to verify to anyone else the scenes that I once saw. Record 37, Daido Moriyama. As I walk through it, my senses are reaching out and I'm drawn to all sorts of things. For me, cities are enormous bodies of people's desires, and as I search for my own desires within them, I slice into time, seeing the moment. I see Shinjuku as a stadium of people's desires. I like the intensity of the city's characters when it's overcrowded and jumbled thoughts and desires are whirling. I cannot photograph anything without a city. I'm definitely addicted to cities. I'm creating my own home by connecting pieces of images from my imagination and things I saw as a child. I basically walk quite fast. I like taking snapshots in the moment of both myself and the outside world. When I walk around, I probably look like a street dog because after walking around the main roads, I keep on wandering around the back streets. I never get bored walking around for over 50 years. Daido Moriyama, Nagisa. Daido Moriyama, record number 39, Kiroku number 39. Moriyama, Tokyo, 1978. In his book, In Excess, Jean-Luc Marion considers what he terms the paradox of the face. He begins by stating that the face shares the same privilege of flesh, in the same way that the latter only feels in feeling itself feeling, the former only gives itself to be seen in seeing itself. If it can be said that the face shares the privilege of flesh, it also has a second privilege of not only to be seen, but especially to see. The face is in possession of unique characteristic of looking without having to be looked at. For Marion, there is a central paradox when we look at the face of the other, because our own eyes fix finally on the eyes of this other, or more exactly, the empty pupils of the person's eyes. Their black holes open on the somber ocular hollow. In other words, in the face we fix on the sole place where precisely nothing can be seen. Thus, in the face of the other person, we see precisely the point at which all visible spectacle happens to be impossible, when there is nothing to see, where intuition can give nothing of the invisible, of the visible.
It's a portrait of Araki.
Nobuyoshi Araki, entitled Eros Diary, 2015.
Araki as well.
Hi Miki, Non-Diary Diary by Nobuyoshi Araki. Nobuyoshi Araki, Untitled, from Private Photography, 1991. Ginza, 318110. Untitled, from Sachin by Nobuyoshi Yoshi Araki. Araki, Sachin, 1964. Inasmuch as it is nothing but pure communicability, every human face, even the most beautiful, is always suspended on the edge of an abyss. This is precisely why the most delicate and graceful faces sometimes look as if they might suddenly decompose, thus letting the shapeless and bottomless background that threatens them emerge. But this amorphous background is nothing else than the opening itself and the communicability itself, inasmuch as they are constituted as their own presuppositions, as if they were a thing. The only face to remain uninjured is the one capable of facing the abyss of its own communicability upon itself and of exposing it without fear or complacency. Giorgio Agamben. Akiko Takezawa, Mother, 2005. Four folds linked to a seriality of becoming, like the scattering of the wind, each with its own direction and force, a chain of connections with textuality and visuality, creating new conjunctions with memories of what might become, serving as the secret of the present.
Any thoughts? Thanks for the readings.
There was a slide early on that I read out. I think it was your writing in response to the early writing. I mean, to the early more calligraphic work of the 14th century.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you, was that your writing?
yeah, it was.
Okay. Was it written specifically for something, or?
Written in relationship to the image.
Yeah. I can't remember the slide now, so I'm trying to. Do you mind?
Just getting it up. Yeah.
It's so helpful to see these again the second time through there, because they're so, I mean, we've done that before, you know, where reading another time or having another chance to look at it, it's really helps. This.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Right. So this is, I thought this was really an amazing example of fold in the writing itself, displaying what it is, like the four, oh, we cannot talk about it, sorry. To look at the folds, sorry, I'm not being clear at all. To look at the folds as realms, and to sort of understand this zone of iridescent becoming as something that the fold creates, a space that's non-existent but existent in all dimensions. So I think this is one of the most, this is why I wasn't sure if it was, anyway, it relates to, oh, I wish Patrick was here to rescue me. It relates to something I think that Deleuze was talking about what the experience of infinity was within the fold.
Mm.
Am I? Yeah. Anyway, that's what this reminded me of. And putting that up against sort of that 16th century painting that you said was that Caravaggio was painting at the same time, that to me feels like a fold, you know, to see that really incredible depth and specificity of that gorgeous ink painting, and then think of the single point of light and the drama of Caravaggio and the way in which drama is expressed differently, or heightened sensitivities or sensibilities are expressed differently. Like, that's so dramatic. And so to think about, you know, and they're not in communication with each other yet. So to think about that as a folded experience, that would be that, I don't know.
But yeah, it seems to, I mean, it seems to me though that in the Japanese painting, there's a much more sophisticated kind of idea of temporality than there is in Caravaggio. And therefore it's much more of the fold in a sense that it exceeds the kind of interior exterior threshold.
Yeah,
in a way. And that,
and including the fact of the surface, like what it's on, what it's for, that the screens move and fold and change and open and close. You know, I mean, all of it. Yeah. It's the multiplicity.
It just seems so much more contemporary, all of the kind of temporality of the Japanese landscapes in general than anything that was going on in the West.
Yeah, their technique feels like it's not, is it called chiaroscuro, right? For Caravaggio's, like you're mimicking the reality, but in the Japanese painting, it's more about the feeling and the expression, maybe of the environment and also of the spiritual illusions behind the certain paintings, and also its movement. Let the brushstrokes to be itself and to be a way of expression rather than a way of illustrating things.
Yeah, so like a much more enigmatic sense of time.
An open sense of time. I guess what I'm saying by the drama is that there's intensities, people are experiencing intensities all over the world, and then they're responding to them through this artistic output. And so there's a height of sensibility in all forms of artistic output, and that to capture, not capture, but to investigate, visually what it is, the intensity of being human in this moment, what it is to experience time. Vermeer tries to freeze it or suspend it or flattens it or illustrates it, as you guys were just saying. And I guess the fold that I was thinking of was that at the same time, it's not just that aesthetically things are experienced differently. It's that, I don't know, for me, I'm interested in the fact that intensities are themselves prioritized differently under different circumstances, and the visual output is different because of that. Does that make any sense? No?
All right. Can I share something? I was thinking, I have a tendency of looking at the things Western way and Asian way. When I hear like a Kantian dualism, I would usually think about Taoism's yin and yang concept, which are both in a way present. And things like Japanese art, etc., and reminds me of more of Hinduism or Buddhist influence of life in circular mode, how they have a concept of reincarnation and our past lives and current lives and future lives all connected. I think what is unique in Japanese art and culture is that they have this geographic, could be pluses and minus, but I would say pluses in this case, with all this influence from China, India, or later on from Western world. They can afford to have it molded in their own way, and like their insist worship. A few times that I've been to Japan or Japanese friends, they have this generation after generation of remembering their ancestors, think about their future generation, that sort of thing. I think it's in a way it's the bold thing when you talk about the time, it goes continuously moving about. That's my understanding. On that note, I like to recommend a movie that I watched recently. I was in Korea for about 2 weeks very recently, and in the airplane, I watched a movie called Past Lives. Anybody heard or seen? Written and directed or produced by Korean Canadian, talk about childhood friends and meeting over Zoom 12 years later when she was in US and he's still in Korea. And then 12 years later, when he broke up with his girlfriend, visiting her, who is married. So those 3 layers of encounter over 24 years period time, but also they are talking about past lives and future lives, and their connection at this life is only about this much. That's the concept of, to me, in a way, so this fold, continuous and somehow inside, outside, inside, and sort of loop. Again, going back to Buddhism, that enlightenment is out of this loop. Maybe I'm stretching a little bit too much into religion. Anyway, if you have a chance, I would recommend Past Lives. It makes you think a lot about, maybe in a way, this old concept, I think.
What do you think about the face and the fold? I mean, obviously, the time is marked in the folds of the face, but I mean, this idea of the show me the face, your true face before you were born, is this the same idea, this eternal emptiness, this Zen circle?
Mm. I mean, the thing which is given as being the most substantial reality of all things is at the same time the most fragile and vulnerable to its relationship to it being nothing.
And its inability to see itself. I mean, in all of these images, there's a seeking, that temporal anxiety. Is that something of what Moriyama was talking about when he was talking about having an experience that he knows is unknowable?
Any more contributions?
Can I say something?
Yeah, you can.
It seems to me, compared to, I think, Japanese art, they adapted Western art really well by having their own originality. And compared to Western art, it seems to me they wanted to be closer by having nothing, whereas Western art, they wanted to get closer to origin by religious concept a lot. So I thought it's quite interesting to think about Western and Eastern at the same time.
I mean, it's a different feeling of absence and presence. Western visuality is based upon the metaphysics of presence. Whereas Zen philosophy is absence or emptiness.
And also in relation to our last class in the drawing of Holbein's, I feel his drawings are more like for absence to happen, which has more breath inside of the drawings, while the painting is like stuffy. And that's why we feel it's maybe the drawing is more attractive rather than the painting. Maybe the painting would be like similar to the same period of thing because the technique is very sophisticated. But still, even for the Western technique, there are still something that's behind of those techniques that you can see each other's styles different. And I think those style differences are the spiritual behind each painting that belongs to the artists themselves.
Well, that's very interesting, that relationship between Holbein's all paintings and his drawings. almost a different art.
I guess it makes me think of like the difference. I mean, I guess the purpose of the drawings, it wasn't intended maybe as art itself. It was more, in preparation for the painting. But and so I guess that's kind of interesting. And I don't know, it makes me think of like the relationship between, say, medieval art and like oil painting, then the onset of oil painting, Tudor times and stuff, and just this relationship to illusion. It's like the oil painting becomes this amazing illusion of reality, whereas with medieval art, it's the icon or the drawing as a stylistic. I mean, I'm mixing too many things, I guess, in my mind, but just thinking then about the relationship to the kind of ink images he was showing, that kind of layering of kind of, it's not creating illusion, but it's like the illusion happens within you or something, but it's ink, you see it for what it is, as well as, yeah, I don't have anything to say actually, but apart from just the relationship between the different time periods and what I guess the aims are within that time, what you're trying to do with the image, what is it you're trying to bring forward? I don't know.
I was interested in the difference between scrolls and screens and books as a sort of mobile visuality compared with the oil painting, which is heavily framed and creating a world. I mean, as if the form of Japanese art opens itself out to the rest of space much more.
Yeah, and it has also with the screens and the scrolls. It seemed to me that they had, a very clear relationship to installation art. And was kind of, or in a sense, like a pure idea of installation art, and was pretty contemporary for that time, considering the spaces that they were installed in.
And I also add screens and scrolls are also used in Korea and also China, etc. Hopefully, sometime in later March, I have a group show with a couple of things on paintings and embroidery thing. At that time, if I'm ready, I might be able to share some of the embroidery. My mother did quite a lot of those work. And when she passed away, the family actually took all those silk embroidery out of screens. So we just kept it, and I'm actually trying to make it more of scroll or screen next time I'm visiting Korea. The whole industry, there are some part of Seoul, all those shops all around, like even in London or Hong Kong, any place, there are usually roads, the street full of those shops making scrolls or screens. So hopefully at some point I can share some of those.
Good. Samuel, would you like to do the presentation now? Thank you.
Yes, please, thanks. I just want to say, yeah, man.
Cannot hear you, Fabiano. Fabiano cannot hear you.